and this one's regarding yo-yo dieting and the cost over time through cycles. That if you're not focusing on your powerhouse, that is keeping your legs and your hips, your core, your pillar as it's referred to, active, stable, thriving, alive, right? Demanding more calories, demanding more movement. Over time, when you're doing all these radical diets, you're going to lose mass on the lower body, particularly if you're just walking or doing low-level activity. So at some point, you have to consider what needs to be done to move out of this terrible state that you metabolically get yourself into that invariably leads to metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetes, diabetes, right? You need to have enough nutrients, have enough nutrient support through the macronutrients, right? There's a combination there. There's a synergy, literally, that occurs there. You're not going to see any positive changes until you address that. And I talk about it to length over and over again, but I highly recommend going on orthomolecular.org and looking into orthomolecular science. Orthomolecular means to make right. Linus Pauling came up with it. There are two camps. There are those who are fervently and adamantly against orthomolecular nutritional science. They're typically bought off through the supplement companies and big pharma. And then there's what works, what heals, what we start out with, right? It's no surprise that vitamin C is always equated with the sun. It really is that vitamin and that source that is the center, the core. When we're talking about bolstering and taking in high doses, there really is no established upper limit, even though you'll talk to many camps that say that there is. There's people to this day that go on doctor-monitored IV drip solutions where they're taking in 50 and 60,000 milligrams of vitamin C. And then, of course, this leads into many other areas where you're going to look for metabolic dysfunction and then address the dysfunction, which was really unpopular with, and still is, with the pharmaceutical industry. This is why around the time that Linus Pauling was doing all this research, right? That's when Big Pharma back in the early 90s was rearing its ugly head, paying off all these doctors and buying off the lawyers, right? And then there was this big push, this big movement where people supplicated. They went anti-principle, right? And how do you think that's working for them today? They, like a virus, it leached the energy from people all around the world. We would be in such a better place if orthomolecular science and nutrition was taken seriously from the beginning. And so you begin to, I would also recommend something that you're not going to find attached to orthomolecular.com. Why? I have no idea, but Billy J. Saley, Heal with Amino Acids and Nutrients, amazing publication, amazing book, something that you very much want to look into, and goes through the application process of how these amino acids work, how the synergizing functional nutrient and micronutrient aspects work, what you're going to need to focus on to accompany these interactions. But something that's not talked about is what I'm doing right now and why I'm doing it. It's prompting with cortisol, gluconeogenesis, a constant movement pattern, a need for these higher doses of vitamin C. You have to drive, right? That's how G&G or gluconeogenesis is depicted from a nutritional science perspective, right? And even more so, you have to take in enough protein to prompt that gluconeogenic or that G&G state, right? Thereby bringing up your cortisol and making cortisol your friend. The stress is going to come regardless. Why not create a system within you where the stress prompts something that is actually prompting growth, right? That's where we want to be. That is what orthomolecular science and nutrition address. But chronically, when we're not living this way, when we're not taking in enough, when we're not taking in a surplus, you're going to see physically what begins to happen. You look at the typical alcoholic's body. I'll bet you any of you could describe that body. No buttocks. Not that I have one, but I'm not an alcoholic. But I did drink last year more than I should have, and I think that actually that that those injurious alcohol dehydrogenase producing poisons that the body reacts to, particularly the liver, the kidneys, the spleen, all your body organs see it as an attack, right? That it disturbs your metabolic function. Then people go, and it also mobilizes fat through your system. But do you think that equals anything good, right? This is what atherosclerosis is all about. This is what a buildup of plaque is all about. Is the stress releases the fat through the system, right? But then the alcohol is no longer in the system, and the fat just goes through this 9.5 minute circulation and just rests at where? Right around your heart. That's the only muscle that's just pumping away when you're pissed off, when your adrenaline is just going, right? So you want to get into this place where you make cortisol your friend, where you anticipate these stressful periods of time. So you need to prompt oxidative stress, right? So you not only need to go into constant exercise, but you have to do what most people aren't doing these days. This is prompted through financial destitution that's occurring. People are leaning more heavily on credit. I know I myself am, as I'm doing this, right? There's like this bifurcation of total health, total fitness, even recommending healthy and vital prompts for your nutritional status, right? And another one, that I'll just throw in there is like algae, nori, things like this, where you can start introducing these nutritional sources into your diet nutrition plan. Chlorophyll makes a really big difference when you're stepping up beyond and trying to gain some space between you and deficiency. But there's certain things that you have to have as a mainstay. And again, this gets down to taking in enough nutrients, but you're going to need to take in enough calories. You have to get to a place where you have too much energy and you want to do these exercises. Sure, somebody can build up just enough exercise to want to do a few arm curls, right? And then they're exhausted and they're done. You need to build up the type of fuel that systemically provides power and sustainability to where you want to do this type of resistance training at least 3 times a week, right? Getting back into the squats, getting back into the full body systemic circulation that drives up the growth hormone, that drives the hormones up into balance regardless of your age. Be well.